Alright, so I guess it's as good as time as any. I've been wanting to do a video for a long time about Fox and the Hound. Well, I've been wanting to do one about a lot of different movies, but that one in particular, because I think it gets at how I perceive perfection. Even as perfection described in especially as perfection described in the Bible. There's a few other movies I'd love to break down or go through. Bambi, Pinocchio, Land Before Time. There's just a couple like movies you come across where they just feel like they are so relative to our personal stories and stories as humanity as well. But anyway, in particular, Fox and the Hound, sorry, I'm gonna get in my car here, was the one I wanted to talk about because of that reason, because it has to do with the forgiveness of God, it has to do with the Garden of Eden, it has to do with childlikeness, the divine child, which I think is kind of somewhat the closest thing to godliness, I guess, because Jesus says you cannot enter the kingdom unless you become like a little child, and whoever receives one of these little ones receives me, whoever receives me receives the Father. So in this kind of like scaling, he's kind of saying God is childlike in nature, not childish but childlike. He's not like Peter Pan. Peter Pan's a little prick a lot of the times. Anyway, so the story of Fox and the Hound, if you haven't seen the movie, highly recommend to stop this right now and go watch it and just enjoy it. Don't try to break it down, don't think about it. It'll probably make you cry. Made me cry. I used to never watch it because I always thought it was really sad, but then once I understood the whole narrative structure and the story of it, I was like, man, this is one of the best Disney cartoons ever made. At least I think it is. Maybe biased. So anyways, to get into the story, it starts out, you have this, it starts out with the hunting scene. It's a guy with his hunting dogs, and they're chasing a fox. And you see the fox, like, running through the fields, and then you hear a gunshot, and you know they got the fox. So then, the next part is, this old lady's going out. I don't know if it's the next morning or something. There's an owl character. It's kind of like a motherly wisdom character. She finds this, there's a baby fox it gets left. It's a mother's fox that got killed. It's her baby. And so I think what happens, if I remember right, I'd like to rewatch it, but the owl finds this little fox laying there, and she knows she doesn't have the proper tools to take care of it, so she ends up like stealing the old lady's laundry and tosses it, is flying away with it, and drops it on the fox so the old lady will find the fox. And she finds it, and this old farmer lady takes it into her house, nurses it, cares for it, provides for it, is a mother to this fox. And it's like a son to her, basically. And then, so this fox grows up, and it's still a baby fox, it's a child. And meanwhile, the hunter, which is the old lady's neighbor, he gets a new hunting dog, a bloodhound, and it's just a little puppy, and it's named, so the fox's name, sorry, pause here. The baby fox's name is named Todd, just for reference. The baby dog's name is Copper. So you have this bloodhound and this fox, they're both the same age. I can't remember if they both wander off or if the fox wanders off, and I think it's something like that. The fox is kind of wandering off and playing, and the bloodhound, he says, I smelled something I never smelled before. And so he just starts following his nose, and he finds the fox, and then they just play together because they don't know any better. So there's the Garden of Eden. It is having not partaken of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They're childlike. They're just enjoying life. They're children. They don't see each other's differences. They're not playing God. They're not judging each other, pointing the finger, condemning. It's none of that. They're just having fun and playing in the river together and living life like children would. And then there's this really interesting song where it's hard to say that it's a bad song or good song, because the hunter, he has 2 dogs. One of them's an old hunting dog, and he's getting old. So that's one of the reasons I think he kind of gets the puppy. Not necessarily as a replacement, but just as a helper hunting dog. So this older hunting dog is around, and he's killed lots of animals. So there's this one song. Let's get back to the song. Sorry if this is a little bit scattered. This one song that the owl sings to the fox, and it's like elimination, lack of education is what she says. And that's where it starts to go downhill for both characters. And it's hard to say that that's bad, because like you want to, she's basically saying don't be a fool, you need to be educated. The older hunting dog starts telling the younger dog, like, we're gonna have to hunt. He's kind of like telling him, this is who you are. He's giving him his identity, right? Which is causing him to find himself and grow up into a name, into identity, but it's causing him to damn the other, the outside, the fox. And so this hunting dog is being taught from his mentor, older hunting dog, how to be, who he is, what his identity is. Instead of having a childlike identity, he now is a hunter, a predator, and the fox is the prey. And so that's what the old wise owl is teaching the fox. This is your identity, you're a prey. And you're going to be eliminated if you're not educated. You better be wise and cunning like a fox, so you can outsmart this bloodhound. So that's when they start. That's the descent down the mountain from the garden, and they're just going down into further resentment and bitterness. And then things happen. The fox is playful. He's childish. He's not necessarily childlike. I mean, he is childlike, but he's also childish. And so he goes and he's like playing pranks on the old hunting dog. And that causes Copper, the younger hunting dog, to get even more embittered towards him. And because, I mean, he likes his mentor, I guess you could say fatherly figure. He likes his hunter, his master, and his hunting dog friend. And so when he sees the fox being stupid and teasing and mocking and poking at what he's striving to become, is telos, is the fox is kind of mocking it. That caused him to be more embittered. Eventually the older hunting dog, I think, gets hurt, and then that's when Copper, the bloodhound, just goes into like, all right, I'm out for vengeance now. There's a series of events, but one thing kind of breaks the camel's back. Is that the right phrase? I don't know. So you see this descent. They're at the top, childlikeness, and then they eat that tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they're like, this person, they see each other's differences, and they see each other's flaws, and then they start going further and further down the mountain until it's just all bitterness and resentment there. And this is why I wanted to, God, the story's so freaking good. So mom, like the motherly figure, the lady who owns the fox, she realizes she can't keep the fox. So she has to go let the fox back into the woods, because she says, if I keep it here at my house, this hunter's going to come get it. He comes banging on my door asking for this fox. He's going to just shoot it eventually. I need to go set it free in the woods. So she does that. The fox ends up finding some girl. They're trying to, start a new life. I'm probably missing a bunch of like good juicy details in that, because I'm just skimming over it. I haven't thought about it as much. Anyway, the hunter and Copper and the older dog are pursuing the fox, and the fox is running from them. Somehow he gets up on a railroad tracks, and the fox is able to jump away before the train comes, and the older hunting dog gets hit. That's the point, I think, when the bloodhound goes into blood mode, and he's like, I'm just out for blood now, vengeance. And so then him and the hunter are like, we're gonna get this fox for I can't remember the older dog's name. It's gonna come to me as soon as I'm done this video. They're basically wanting vengeance for him. They're justice in the name of vengeance is what they would call it. And justice, like George MacDonald says, it's not vengeance. Justice is mercy. It's because justice is making things just and right again. So it's bringing two things back together, not further dividing them through vengeance and destruction. But anyways, they want their quote-unquote justice, so they are pursuing the fox relentlessly, So the fox is running. I think he does some distractions to help the girl fox get away. Basically, they're kind of climbing this. They're on this cliff face, right? And there's like a big waterfall, just to paint the picture. And the hunter and the bloodhound are after the fox. And I think, if I remember right, they're chasing the fox, and the fox. Then there's this bear, giant bear, that comes down from the mountain as they're chasing the fox, and it hits the hunter. I think he might be about to shoot the fox, and then this bear comes and it attacks the hunter, and knocks him down. He falls down and knocks him down the mountain. So then the bloodhound stops chasing the fox, goes to save his master, and then the bear starts attacking Copper, the bloodhound, and it hits him. And then I think the fox hears his friend yelp, and that's when he like turns around and comes back. So it's basically this, what the idea getting across here is, there's this higher evil. It's Gog and Magog. It's all those stories of the one from the north, the one from above, the death from above. It's Game of Thrones, the White Walkers beyond the wall. It's a looming death, a transcendent death that comes down from above, that's unstoppable, that puts that has the capability of reconciling, because you're so focused on resentment you can't see your friendship anymore. You can't see your own childlikeness. And it's this bear, this transcendent death, that comes down and starts laying waste to the hunter and the dog, Copper. And so the fox hears his friend yelp, and then he remembers their friendship. And then I think he pauses for a minute, because he's really being torn inside. Like, do I go with the girl, or do I go back and save my friend? So he goes back and he starts fighting with the bear. And then they are on the cliff face where the waterfall is. I think there might be a bridge, and the fox is leading him away, and then the bridge breaks, and him and the giant bear like fall down through the waterfall, and you think they might have died. Of course, it's a Disney movie. And then he starts to come up out of the water. So the fox is coming up out of the water, and then as he's coming up, he's like limping, he's barely alive, and then you hear the gun cock, and the hunter is like pointing the gun at the fox, and he's gonna shoot him anyway, because that's just what he does. He's a hunter. So, I mean, you can't blame the guy. He's killed so many animals. There's one thing I want to circle back to. Side note, after this, hopefully I'll remember. Because there's this really compelling scene in there where I'm just like, it really gets at the depths of forgiveness and mercy, and why I think it's ultimately going to liberate hell. So anyways, fox comes up out of the water. Hunter points a gun at him, getting ready to kill him again. And then you see Copper, the dog. He's just like steps in front of the gun, and the hunter's like, "Get out of the way, Copper! I'm gonna kill the fox." And Copper won't move, and he just steps further in front of him, and then they just walk away. So it's that's the justice. It's the mercy and the forgiveness. It's the transcendent death comes down and causes him to wake up and think like, what the heck are we doing here? Life is more important than our petty arguments, and it's too short. Life is too short to waste doing something like this and chasing each other, predator and prey. So the forgiveness comes in right there, and everything's reconciled and rebirth and brought back to life. Their friendship is resurrected, and they're back in the garden. It's forgiveness takes them back to the garden, and it's that forgiveness that makes perfect. Like, forgiveness is perfection. That's what it is. Maybe I shouldn't say it that plainly, but if all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, then forgiveness is perfection. Because you could make an attempt to say it's sinlessness, but then you still don't necessarily. I don't know if you can know the depths of unconditional love if you've never seen it reach down to hell to pull you back. It gets into the prodigal son story. You have the two sons. The one never sinned and never did anything wrong, and he doesn't quite seem to understand it. At the end of the story, he doesn't quite seem to understand his father's unconditional love as much as his younger son does. That's the fatted calf that they kill. It's unconditional love. It's mercy. It's forgiveness. That's the fatted calf that they eat and dine on. And he's like, you never killed one for me. I never messed up. I never did anything wrong. You never gave me the fatted calf. Because he didn't need it. That's why Christ comes to save sinners. And I'm getting scattered now. So the image, I want to go back. My mind is just jumping. I'm sorry. Pause it. So that's the story of the movie. It's very compelling, very good. It shows the childlikeness that we're all trying to get back to. We're trying to get back to that garden, and I personally cannot conceive of a way to get back to the childlikeness and the garden and the kingdom of heaven, whatever you want to call it. I can't see any door to get back there without forgiveness. And all that being said, I do get concerned about this because I don't say that as in anything goes. Forgiveness, I don't perceive it as flattery. So I don't think that just means nothing matters, anything goes. We're all seeking a higher truth. We're all seeking a higher good. We're all seeking love. But it has to, forgiveness is what reconciles. It heals and renews and restores. And yeah, but there's still truth. It's mercy and truth are married together. Truth sits on the mercy seat. So there is also truth. And that's why forgiveness, that's what I was going to say. Forgiveness implies a truth. Because it implies a truth, and it implies that you missed it. It implies that you had an aim and you missed the mark. And that's why you need forgiveness. And if you can't see that you missed the mark, then you're self-righteous and you don't need it. Which I don't even say that to condemn. I just say that to say that that's what Christ said. He says, I didn't come to save the righteous. I didn't come to call the righteous to myself, but sinners to repentance. The self-righteous can't hear him because they don't see their need for him. So they don't hear him calling, even though he calls all. So forgiveness, that's why the cross is offensive. Because it implies that you need a savior, that you missed the mark. So anyway, sorry, I was covering up my camera. I don't know how long I was doing that. I haven't been even looking at my phone. The image I wanted to get back to. This video is way longer than I thought, but I ran through an entire movie. But the image from the movie I wanted to get back, where I think ultimately forgiveness will liberate hell. I have other reasons, scriptures for that. Psalm 139 kind of gets at that. In Peter, it talks about Christ going into the depths to preach to the dead who are already in the pits of hell. Job talks about the grave being prison cells, things like that. So you have this hell, this idea of hell as a holding place. I'm just trying to paint a picture first before I get into the imagery of the movie. So you have this idea of hell as like a holding place, and Christ goes down there and preaches to them, right? And Christ is eternal. So he's constantly there. He's in heaven and at the same time in hell. Like the story's being preached. His sound has gone out. If he is eternal, then the story is, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I go from your presence? I can't ascend into heaven and hide from it. I can't go all the way down to hell and hide from it. God's presence, his mercy, his forgiveness, especially the forgiveness of Christ on the cross, the king becoming the martyr, that symbol goes down to hell and goes up to heaven. And that's why I think ultimately hell will be liberated, because I'm in, what does he say in there when he's talking in Luke? I'm in these torments. I'm in these flames being tormented. Please go tell my brothers about this. And then you have a judgment after that, where wherever that rich man is, that's from the rich man and Lazarus, wherever that rich man is being tormented in the flames, he's going to be given up on the last day to be judged. And then there's the judgment and what brings justice. So God's going to try to bring justice, so he's going to try to offer forgiveness. And I don't know at that point who would reject it, but maybe there are some that would prefer annihilation over that. That would still say, you're not God, I'm God. Give me annihilation. I don't know. That's up in the air. So that's my goodness, I'm really rambling and I'm so sorry. That's my perception of hell, and that's why I believe in, like, the ultimately forgiveness will liberate hell, empty it, so to say, and then cast hell and the torments of into the flames, into annihilation, cast those things away. Death will be done away with, and death will just become rest. That's all it will become. It'll become shalom. But to the image, so now I think I can get to the image in the movie. Okay, so the one example I often use, and a lot of people often use, is Hitler. Like, how can a man like Hitler be saved? Well, we don't even have to think about that, right? Because the dude's in hell, who cares? Like, he got his, sort of thing. That's a lot of people's perception. That might have even been mine in the past, probably was, especially because I put so very little thought towards it. But I think it is the martyr, it is the love of God, even through, not just through Christ, but through the Christian, where when you begin to see that he is your brother, that he is, that God made us both, that we both were once the fox and the hound in the garden. Like, if you kind of look at it that way, like, who would go sit with Hitler in hell? Probably his mother, who could look at him and say, I remember you in your youth. Like, and then her love and her compassion and her forgiveness would be relentless. And so if I could develop that in myself, that love of Christ in myself, then I would look at God and say, like George MacDonald says, when you look at God in love, in true love, it's like you get to this point where you don't want his face looking at you anymore. You want to turn it to your brothers and say, no, Lord, look at him. Like, Father, look at him. Look at my brother. So I think it's that. So to get at the Hitler idea, how this ties into the movie, is because you have Hitler who committed genocide, right? He killed thousands of people there were lots of, I guess, through a series of commands. You could explain it away trickle down through all this high official watches over high official thing. So he, like, you could say even the Nazis killed all these Jews, whatever. It doesn't freaking matter. Like, they killed your brothers. They killed your friends. They killed your neighbors. They killed all these people. So you have this image in Fox and the Hound where there's this scene, and I don't know if he's kind of in denial about Copper and he doesn't realize that Copper's the hunting dog. Somehow he comes across the fur shed, and the fox walks in and sees the genocide. He sees all his friends, all his family. His mom's probably hanging up in there as well. And he sees all this. He sees the genocide of his childhood best friend. And it's like the end of the story with that death coming down from above. It's like even then he's able to forget that genocide and see his friend once more. See his friend not as the hunter, the genocidal hunter, but he sees his friend as in his childlikeness again. He sees his friend in love, and goes back to save him. So I don't know. The movie's extremely powerful to me. I love it. Anyway, sorry, I really apologize if this is scattered, but I think maybe I finally talked about it in somewhat coherent way. Drop some comments or let me know what you think.